All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to San Diego Public Library's Books for Good Trouble program. My name is Vanessa Gempis, she, her pronouns, and I am the Teen Center Manager at the San Diego Central Library, and I'm super honored to be your host and moderator for tonight's event. I'd like to tell you a little bit about Books for Good Trouble before we introduce our special guest. So, Books for Good Trouble, pardon me, Books for Good Trouble Social Justice Dialogs is a series developed by San Diego Public Library and made possible in part by the Institute of Museum and Library Services, which is the primary source of federal support for the nation's libraries and museums. Their vision is a nation where museums and libraries work together to transform the lives of individuals and communities. Books for Good Trouble aims to create opportunities for our community to come together in a trusted environment, participate in meaningful social justice civically through civically engaging dialogues with books by authors of color as the foundation for those discussions. Tonight's theme will focus on the importance of representation, racial justice, and writing as a form of activism. Before we get started, I want to acknowledge our ASL interpreters that are joining us on screen this evening to help make this program more accessible, and thank our friends at San Diego Pride for their partnership and helping make this virtual stream possible. So, without further ado, we are excited to welcome Chris Lee. Chris is a native of Memphis, Tennessee. Required reading for the Disenfranchised Freshman is her first novel, which came together after her graduation from college when she began to write her experiences attending a predominantly white institution. She's worked as a mentor for foster youth and has interned in a school setting where she counsels middle school aged children. Welcome, Chris.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see everybody.
Yeah, it's still weird doing all of this stuff virtually, but we appreciate the opportunity that it gives us to talk to you, even when you're not in California. So to get us started, if you want to tell us a little bit about required reading for the disenfranchised freshmen.
Sure. Okay, so my novel, Required Reading for the Disenfranchised Freshman, follows my main character, Savannah, as she uncovers an admissions scandal at her predominantly white university. Um, this book came about from my own college experiences attending a predominantly white university. So a lot of what's in this story was written from real life experiences, if not from me, but from people that I knew personally.
All right. So in an interview with We Need Diverse Books, you mentioned that not only is required reading for the disenfranchised freshman your debut novel, it's the first novel you wrote. When did you decide that you wanted to write a novel?
I don't think I ever decided. I think it just kind of came to me, especially after graduating from college. I had that moment where I really didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I think my first Instagram post, if you go on my Instagram, it's my graduation picture, and it literally says, "I'm graduating in 5 days. I don't know what I'm gonna do with my life." And so, writing this book was kind of a way for me to get into the work field, kind of. I never thought that it would go as far as it did, but it was an activity for me to get out of my head. It was an activity for me to not stress about leaving college. It was a way for me to heal from being in college. And so writing this book came about from that. It also came about from, just going to a predominantly white university, all that entails.
Right, right. And that's it's such an interesting experience because I also went through a predominantly white university. And it took a while for me to realize, oh, hey, people don't actually know what I am, or how to respond to that all the time. Um, and in that, Savannah is also finding her way to become who she is and learning how to interact with people who aren't um, who don't necessarily see her as the wonderful person that she is. And so she never intended to become an activist. Is that what you always intended her to be when you realized you were writing a book? How did she evolve as a character as you were writing?
She definitely was an activist in the first few drafts. She, in publishing, it's a lot of drafts. I think required reading, this final version was at least the 20th draft that I went through with this novel. So in the beginning, she wasn't an activist. I just wanted to write a story about a girl that's going to college and how her life changes. Eventually, it evolved into what it is now. But she wasn't always an activist, which I think made it made me more clear about how I wanted to write her. So gradually, she did become more into activism because I wanted to portray the real life things that happen on my college campuses. And some people, they did let the things that happen to us drive them into social justice activities. And I wanted to put that into my novel.
So would you say you identify more as a Savannah, a Tasha, or a Benji?
Ooh, that's hard.
Sorry, I know I just
Oh,
threw this one at you.
um, I am definitely more of a Tasha. I was more of a Tasha in college. I was like, I'm just here to get my degree and I'm going to be great and successful. But when push came to shove, I showed up. And so I'm definitely more of a Tasha.
That is amazing. Um, so when Savannah writes her Wooddale Confessions, she's using writing and social media as a form of activism. What was that intentional on your part? And what role does writing play in activism and social justice for you?
Social the social media aspect of the novel definitely played a part. That was also an aspect that came in way later. I think the social media part came in around 2019, and I started writing this book in 2016. So that was a very long gap. I wanted to portray how social media really is its own form of activism now. You learn a lot from just being on Twitter, being on Instagram. You see a lot. You can do more than when I first started writing the book. So I wanted to put that into the story. I wanted it to be relatable to the young people that were going to read my book. I believe that my writing is activism because it's a way for me to use my voice. I know I can't, sometimes I can't march, sometimes I can't donate, and but writing is something I can do, and it's something that I believe I can do well, and I want to share that with the world.
Yeah, it is something that you do so well. I mentioned this to you earlier, but I definitely cried. I definitely felt a lot of things when I was reading required reading. Um, are there any other things you mentioned that you started this in 2016? How did events like elections and um, all of the Black Lives Matter movement and all the things that have happened in between COVID, how did those shape the way that your novel came about?
So when I graduated college, it's when Black Lives Matters first started, being more prevalent. It's when the Trayvon Martin death happened in high school, and so I believe like from high school with when I graduated in 2012 to when I graduated in 2016, I felt that it was something that was always happening. And it got to the point that wow, I can't even keep up with everything that's happening. And so I wanted I wanted that to be portrayed also in the novel, like how sometimes you don't choose activism, but the way that the way that you see the world and the way that you view things often change. And like with Savannah, she's a sheltered person. She has never really seen these type of things that she's experienced on campus. And so when she goes to campus and she's inundated with a new life, it's difficult for her. And I feel that social justice and the way that we view it, especially during the times that I grew up in, it definitely went into me making a novel into what it was, especially the marching. I was very deliberate on the scene at the end. I don't want to spoil it. Oh gosh, how do I talk about it without spoiling? um, just the scene at the end was very deliberate. It was based off a very real experience of me and my friends marching. after the death of Freddie Gray. I'm just gonna leave that there.
Yeah. How much did the book change really? Because you mentioned 20 drafts. Did it completely about face in that time that you were writing?
It definitely changed a lot. Like I said in the beginning, it was just about a girl. She's going to this predominantly white college, and she's just living through it. It really wasn't when I first started writing. It wasn't. It was no plot. It was really just her living her life, and everyone was like, "Okay, this is fine," but nothing is happening. And mind you, this is my first book, so I never, I didn't know that. I thought I could just write with no plot and they'll be totally fine, but it wasn't. So in the beginning, yes, Savannah was an activist. She was just living her life, going to college. um, and then as time went on and more things started happening in the world, and I got my mentor, and she decided that it would be nice to for us to put more relatable things into this novel. And social justice issues, activism on college campuses is something that happens every day, and novels, especially young adult novels, that's not really seen in those books. I have rarely seen. I wouldn't say it's not there, but I've rarely seen a novel with a black main character and her two black best friends as they navigate a predominantly white university. I haven't seen that before, so I definitely wanted to portray that and do it in a way that was relatable, that was also, I also wanted it to be happy. I know it's a tough book, but I wanted to sprinkle those happy moments in there and make sure that people knew that even though they went through trauma, they also had each other. They also had a bond. They also had professors who looked out for them. They also had friendships. And I think that also changed as the novel went on. Especially in the beginning, I got kind of jaded about my own college experiences. So I just put in, you know, all the bad things. And then I realized, oh, I can put in happy things too. It's it doesn't just have to be about my trauma. It can be, the fun times I had as well.
And there are such like great moments of joy with with Savannah and her two best friends. It's just like the it really makes the things that happen to her and that she makes happen stand out a lot more because you have those moments of her being happy at Wooddale. When especially when she really hadn't thought that she would be. She was kind of ready to like grin and bear it for her mom. And her home life changes a lot too over the course of the novel, which is with her best friend Bianca and her mom at home. um the scene where just like the chapters where she goes home and she sees how much everything has changed, that was a huge thing for her. Do you want to talk a little bit about writing that section of the novel?
Actually, those parts were my favorite chapters in the novel where she goes home and she meets with her best friend Bianca and she realizes what happened to her, and she realizes how, oh, no matter where I go, things will change and change is inevitable. And I feel like that was just a really powerful statement to make because especially when you go home from college for the first time and you go home for a break and you realize, oh, my friends aren't really the same anymore. I've changed as well as they have. The things that we experience together, they still matter, but it's just not the same. Um, so yeah, those are my favorite. That is my favorite part of the novel. Just her realizing that.
And it's such a good and relatable part because it's hard when you realize, oh hey, yeah, I left, but the world kept moving on without me too. So like it's and I feel like it's especially hard when you're a teen because you kind of feel like, hey, wait, this is home. This is supposed to be the same, but
Yes.
then it's not. It's so different.
Then I think people also like, I think they skip over the fact that Savannah is still 17 in this novel. She's
Yes.
very young. The thing she's going through is she's supposed to be in her senior year of high school. Instead, she's in her freshman year of college, and so all these things are new to her. She's still very young. She doesn't know what to expect. All her friends are doing these different things in her at her hometown, and she's stuck at Wooddale. So
Yeah, and you would think, yeah, it's a great school. She's got a lot of opportunities, but it didn't necessarily always feel that way for her. And so in required reading for the disenfranchised veteran, Savannah really makes the place for herself. Like Wooddale isn't always like the welcoming place that she wants it to be. But she makes a place and she makes her voice heard. What were there any specific things that inspired you to make those moments happen in the novel? Sorry, I don't know if that question was confusing.
could you repeat it for me?
Yeah, so like what inspired you to really make Savannah make her own place in Wooddale and make her voice heard in a place that was not meant for her?
Yeah, I feel like as Black people, people of color, we always do that. We always, find our place no matter where we are. Um, just going back to my own college experiences, it was not weird for people to seek out people that look like them just because it it made going through those experiences easier. And so Savannah carving out her own little bubble, her own safety net was a way of protecting herself, I believe. It was like when everything was happening, when the first incident on campus happened, and Tasha was there, and they immediately clicked because of that incident. That was, I think, that was Savannah's way of, you know, even in that trying time, she found a community, and I feel like that happens a lot in PLC, BIPOC um, situations, communities, that we always find each other, and I love that about
Yeah.
us.
And I love that while Savannah was on this very driven quest to make a voice, make her own road, and make people stand up and listen. You also had Tasha and Benji, who were there to support her. They were ready to like be whatever what she needed them to be, but they were also not on quite the same road. And I love that you presented that without judgment, because there are different ways to be active and support and raise awareness. So I love that you included characters who did things in their own way without judging them or making them seem like they were doing less or being less. So although the scene at the end really made me cry at the actual like at the when they were marching, I was like, oh no, I'm having
Yeah.
all the feelings.
Yeah, I feel like that was very important because I feel like people will like judge you for like your activism or lack of activism, but in reality, everyone cannot do the same things. That's why I said I use my writing as a form of activism because I know that in my space now, who I am now, I'm not able to march. I'm not able to give large donations to people, but I can write. I can get my words out there. I can expose injustices in the world, and that's my little piece. Tasha couldn't. Um, in the beginning, I can't say it without spoiling.
No.
Okay, just read the book.
Yeah, read the book and you will see this wonderful journey that all of these characters are on. Because sometimes it's not the right time, it's not the right place for something to happen, for you to do something. Um, and it's always better to come to it in your own time and on your own. Sorry, I'm like tearing up just thinking about it. Just because it was such a great journey and a great moment. Um, Back to the questions I actually sent you. Um, which authors are on your personal required reading list? Like, who inspires you?
Oh, okay, so non-YA would definitely be my Angelou. I know why the cage bird sings. I got that book That was my first grown up book I ever bought when I was in like ninth grade, and I still have that copy, and I still go back and read it sometimes. Toni Morrison, um, definitely beloved. That is the best world building book I've ever read in my life. Uh, just the way that they go about writing about their real life, writing about Black people in a relatable way, in a way that is true to them, and you can get that when it's on the page. That's something that I inspire to be. So, and for YA, I would have to say my mentor, JL. She's the author on Wings of Ebony. If you've never read that, you should definitely check it out. She is very inspiring to me just in the way that she conducts herself in the YA world. As a newbie, it can be kind of overwhelming for me, especially since this is my first novel. I'm not a teacher or a librarian that got into this. I was a regular college student who was working temp jobs before I got this gig. And so um, talking to her always makes me inspired to be better, even if that just means writing a page a day or reading a book that I want to read. Uh, Other people by hey, Nick Stone, Tiffany Jackson, they are also my two favorites. They also inspire me to be go getters.
Yeah, that's just an amazing list. I know that I have read some of their work, and like they're just such inspiring authors. And I feel like you're there. Your your book, like it hits hard and it hits home. So I really hope that um, that you're making it. um, and I know it's hard because publishing is still a world, like even though we have more diverse authors, it's still a very predominantly white institution. So how has it been navigating that? If I can ask that. I don't know if that's like controversial.
It's not, it's not. We talk about this all the time on Twitter. I feel like at this point, it's not controversial. And if it is, there, what can you do?
Yes.
um, I feel that it is definitely still a majority. It's majority white, but also the PLC community is very tight knit. That I don't feel out of place. Like when I go to festivals, when I reach out to people, when I need to go to someone for advice, I never feel that it's hard to do so, especially with social media, especially with Twitter and Instagram and the writing community on there. Even right now, I'm in a 2022 Black debut group that I created, and so we basically just cheer each other on and we give each other advice, we boost each other's work, we do things to make sure that we're on the forefront because if nobody else lifts us up, we know we have to. And that's one of the best parts of being in this community, I think, is how welcoming everyone is.
That is amazing. And I love that. Um, Now, do you can you talk a little bit about what's coming next for you? Like what book you have coming up next?
I finally can, which is so exciting. Okay. Book two follows Bianca. So it's a companion novel that's set in Memphis. It follows her right after, like 5 months after she has, that's a spoiler. Okay, it follows Bianca about 5 months after, 5 months before, some, no, yeah. It follows Bianca the summer after Savannah comes home for Wooddale from college. So it's a companion novel. It's out. It's called Sun Keep Rising. It comes out next spring 2023. So I'm very excited about that. Cover reveal is coming soon.
Yay. That's super exciting. I loved Bianca when I was reading it. I was like, I need to know more about her. Did now did you kind of have in mind writing a companion novel with Bianca as you were writing all of these drafts, 20 drafts of this book?
I actually didn't. So I wrote book two. I think it was right after we got into lockdown during the pandemic. I started writing as a way to, pretend that the world wasn't exploding. And so I just started writing, and in the beginning, it was a teenage pregnancy story. And I sent it to my editor, and she was like, Bianca, she's a teen mother. Why don't you revamp this story and make it about her? And I was like, wow, that is actually an amazing idea, especially because I love Bianca so much. And I love the world that I created in Memphis and required reading, even though we didn't stay in it too long. Each time we were transported from Wooddale to Memphis, I felt like you could tell the shift.
Yeah.
And I wanted to dive into that more.
And I love that. And, just saying, if you ever wanted to write a novel about Tasha, um, I would not be upset about it. Just throwing that out
I'll
there.
try. I'll try.
And then I know in another interview you'd mentioned that required reading originally you envisioned it as an adult novel, um, but you were encouraged to be like, hey, think about the YA sphere for it, just because of the age of the characters, I believe.
Yes,
Um, how did that change your writing style and um, your approach to writing it when you shifted audiences?
I actually didn't change it very much. So this kind of like ties into the argument about how young readers are not that are capable of accepting like harsher concepts, because I really did not change the book that much. I changed a few scenes, like I took out a little cursing, I took out a little of the more raunchy scenes, but writing itself, the language I used, it was always that raw. It was always in your face like that. And I'm glad that I kept it like how it was in the beginning, because teens are very much capable of more than we give them credit for. When I was a teenager, I was not reading Lollipop and Rainbows type of books, which is fine.
Yes, yes, for sure. And we do have a great teen audience in the virtual crowd tonight. We have a few schools who are watching this together virtually, and so it's great that we can speak directly to them about these things. Like teens know about things. We don't need to hide things from them because they hear things, they see things, they
Mm-hmm.
experience things. So um, it's always nice to have them like represented and in a real way, which you definitely did in this book. Um, and so I know we've been trying to avoid spoilers, but
So
I
hard.
this question has been burning, and because I just want to know. So I don't know if you can answer this without spoilers, and if you can't, that's fine. But did you know from the beginning the decision that Savannah would make at the end of the book?
Definitely not. That's I, I was like putting myself in Savannah's shoes each time I changed the ending. It was really a will she or won't she type of thing. And each time I didn't know. I really didn't know the answer to the question. And so once I got my editor, she kind of pushed me to really think about the character that I had created over all these years and what I believed that she would do in this type of situation. And I really had to like believe in my writing, believe in the characters that I had created. And sometimes I still think I didn't make the right choice, but it's it's fine now. It's done.
It's the same kind of thing that Savannah's facing, right? She didn't know if
Yeah.
she made the right choice, but it is what it is. She made the decision. So
Mhm.
it's out there in the world and whether it's
Mhm.
right or wrong, it's done.
Yes,
And
it's a
I
decision I live
personally
with.
yes, yes. And I personally really liked it. I wrestled with it for a little bit. I was like, "Oh, but um and then I just realized like it made a lot of sense. It made so much sense. The more I sat with the book and the more I thought, about it because it made sense in the moment as well. But I was like, I had a lot of feelings. And so it was something that it actually it stuck with me. I was thinking about it for days after I finished the book, which I think is a really a great thing for a book to do, to leave you lingering, to leave you with something that you're thinking about. Um,
For like
and
a little tidbit.
yeah,
before before I got to this ending, actually, I wanted to do like a nice little tidy ending. So I like described everything that everyone was gonna do. I like went into Savannah's life and Tasha and Benji, and they were just talking about what they're gonna do after the semester ends. And I was like, maybe I should let people think a little bit, make them come to their own conclusion because I like that type of book where I can like form my own opinion, form my own conclusion.
yes, for sure. And it definitely had me wanting more. So I'm really excited that we're getting a book of Bianca. And hoping we'll see more of Savannah in there as well, like in the future. Um,
Yeah.
and if you guys want to know exactly what decision we're talking about, definitely read the book because it's so great. And so let's see. Next question. We do have a lot of teens in the audience. What advice do you have for aspiring teen writers?
um, if you want to be a writer, don't go into it with your mind on publishing. I feel that that kind of like kills the creative creativity. It kills the fun of writing. Um, the publishing will be there. You can. It's so fickle that you can't even write towards the market anyway. So write what you want, write what you want to write, and write every day. Get the words on the page. Let other people read them. Read your writing that isn't in publishing. Let your friends read them. Let your parents give people an opportunity to tell you, oh, this is good. Because sometimes all you need is validation, honestly. And I feel like validation from people you actually know will take you further than people in the industry.
That is great advice. And I love that. I love that, yeah, people you know them. So um they know, wow, this is sounding extra dumb as I'm saying it, but they know who you are, they know what you're writing, and so they can tell you like, hey, yeah, this is great, or yeah, this could use some work. Um, but either
Definitely.
way, they know you. Their opinion really matters.
Yes. When I first started writing required reading, and I didn't know anything about publishing. This was before I knew query letters or sending it to agents or manuscript lists or anything like that. I sent it to some of my college friends, which was my target audience, honestly. And I let them read it and I let them, give me feedback because they were the people I was writing for. This is their story as well as mine. And so if they could tell me that, oh, this is good, oh, this needs work, I felt that that mattered way more in pushing me to continue the story than if I went ahead and sent it to people who are already in publishing or people who are already writers.
Yeah, that is awesome. Um, okay, so I think we have about 10 more minutes before we'll open it up for a little bit of a Q and A. So one, wow, my mind just kind of went blank for a second. Have you gotten any pushback about how raw and real the language and the situations that you found in the that are in the book? Have you gotten any pushback from like parents who are like, that's too much, or my teen can't read that?
Well, I try really hard to stay off that part of social media. So I haven't seen anything personally, and I haven't had anything like that come to me. And I had a great editor, so she never thought that at all. She always stood by my decisions to make this novel raw, and that's why I really chose her because fun fact, I had like a few other editors that were interested, but they all wanted me to like change my vision and to like tone it down a little bit or to go a different way. And that wasn't my dream for the story. That wasn't what I wanted to say. And so I'm glad I found my editor who she validated me. She told me, "Oh, okay, this is a real story. This is something that needs to be said, and you're saying it this way. And I know it's kind of in your face, but sometimes that's what people need, and that's really what I chose her."
That is really great. Sometimes it's hard because there's a lot of pressure, especially in like the world right now in the US with like book bannings and um, things like that to 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 water it down, to make it more palatable to certain audiences who may not connect or understand with what's happening. But I feel like you've written very much in a way that inspires empathy, inspires people to take a look at themselves and how they act, and how they what they say, and how it inspires them to help maybe become a better ally. So I love that. Okay, I think do we have so if you guys have any questions, please feel free to write them in the chat. I have one more question. Um, our last official question. If nobody else has questions, I will ask more because I have more. But our last official question is so our Books for Good Trouble social justice dialogue program aims to inspire conversations related to justice issues impacting our local communities. What advice would you give to our audience about how they could start these conversations in their spaces to raise awareness and how they can help make the change they want to see?
I believe that the big, see something, say something, really applies in most situations. Um, Savannah followed that rule to her best of her ability, even when it was hard, even when she felt that she would be ostracized, even when she felt she would get pushed back. She saw something and she spoke up about it. And that is the most common theme in my novel is using your voice for the greater good. And so that's my little advice on bringing up these tough conversations, especially as young people. I think that sometimes that young people can be scared to speak up about injustices that are happening in the world because they don't want to be seen as boring or pushy or things like that. But you will find your place. You will find people that understand you, and speaking up against injustices, they in the long run, they will make you a better place and they will make your community a more safer environment for everyone.
Right. And I feel like your novel really helps tackle that because there are a lot of things that a lot of reasons why young people or anybody feel afraid to speak up, like retaliation or ostracism. And especially when you're young and you're very you're clinging to a very tenuous hold on like a social position or a scholarship or things like that. You don't want to rock the boat. Um, but I hope your novel inspires people to raise their voices and become, even if they don't become activists or in the way that Savannah does, that they become more comfortable speaking their truths.
Yes, being comfortable is like the biggest thing. I feel that people can very much shy away from using their voice or thinking that no one wants to hear what they have to say. And most of the time, that's not true. Most of the time, people they want to listen to you, they want to hear you. So
Yeah. And especially when you're young, it might not seem like it, but seek out those people who are welcoming, who are there to hear you and there to help amplify your voice or help you solve the problem that you need. There are people out there who are so willing to help, and I just really want young folks. Wow, I just really want teens and tweens to really know that your voice has power. So if you've taken nothing else away from tonight, and nothing else away from required reading for the disenfranchised freshmen, I hope it's that. So,
Also, a
all
little
right.
fun fact, I used to be the shyest person ever. I would never have done anything like this when I was 10 years ago, when I was, how old was I? 18. I would not have done anything where I had to use my voice to, talk to people, to advocate for myself, advocate for my book. And things change. You grow older and you realize that, oh, it's not as scary as I think it is, which is nice.
All right, so it looks like we do have a couple of questions. So one question is, what advice would you give to students that don't feel like they fit in and might be pondering leaving their institutions or struggling to make that representation happen at school?
Oh, this is hard because it's very much depending on the person. Um, so for Savannah, she she didn't want anyone to get into, she didn't want anyone in her head, not even her mother, about, leaving Wooddale. And so it's very much a decision that you have to make for yourself. Pro and con list, a what do I get out of this situation? What am I not getting in my current situation? For me, when I was deciding if I wanted to leave the college that I was attending, it was very much, am I happy here? That was my biggest question. Could I be happy here for the next 4 years? And my answer was no, so I left. So it's very much a personal decision, and it's a decision that you can only make. Um, if you feel like you're not being represented properly, if you feel like you're the only person or you're like an outcast on your college campus, that is a big emotional burden to bear, especially as a young person. So it's really what you think you can stand. And it's no right or wrong answer. If you do decide to leave, it bears no, like, it doesn't bear anything on your character. It doesn't make you a less than. It doesn't make you weak that you couldn't stay. And if you do stay, it doesn't make you a sellout. Um it doesn't make you like, oh, I just want to, fit in with these people that don't like me. It makes you human. We all have to make decisions that affect us.
All right, yeah, that's so true. That's great advice. And so we have another question from Chris Fay uh, Guanajuato Hunt. How did you find your agent and or editor? Did they submit your manuscript for you, or did you submit it to a variety of publishing houses?
So with my agent, this is it's a very long story, but I'm gonna try to like condense it. So I had the mentor, JL, picture it, 2019. I have my editor, my mentor, JL. We're working on my novel together. She says, hey, I'm going to send this to Nick Stone, and she's going to send it out to a few agents. I'm like, okay, nice. I didn't think anything would come from it because I'm like, Nick Stone is not going to send out a random girl whose debut novel to agents. But she did, and she sent it to two agents that she thought would enjoy the novel, and that's how I ended up signing with Molly O'Neill with the Root Literary. She really got the story that I was trying to tell. She got my writing. She also didn't want to water it down. She loved how raw and authentic it was. And that was October 2019. We worked together for a few months. I went on sub to get an editor in January 2020. We sold that same month, and It went out to um it went out to a decent amount of houses. We decided to go all big houses, and it worked out in our favor, thankfully. So this is like, is this is not. I am not a normal debut person. I should have prefaced that with this. I should have clarified that. I am not a normal debut. This selling the way that I sold quickly, it does not happen that fast normally. I had a book, I had a concept that was hot at the moment. I didn't know it was going to be hot. I didn't know about anything about publishing. It was hot at the moment, and it sold, and I am grateful for that.
All right. As a follow-up question, how did you connect with your mentor?
I connected with Jess. Um, if you're familiar with Author Mentor Match, it's a mentorship program that's run by Alexa Dune. Um, so I applied to that. That was my. This was after being rejected by Pitch Wars, which Pitch, yeah, that's what's called Pitch Wars. That's after being rejected from that. I decided to do Author Mentor Match. And I told myself that I didn't get into arguments or match, that I was going to take a break from required reading because at that point I had been creating for a while and I was getting rejections. And I had been applying to the contest and I was getting rejected from those. So I thought I needed a little break. I need to sit back, regroup, figure out a game plan. Um, but I got in and just chose my book because, according to her, she said I sound like a baby Toni Morrison, which really just got in my head. So that's how I connected with Jess, JL.
Yeah, that's big. That's definitely gonna get in your head.
Right?
Um, but so any other questions from the audience, please feel free to drop them in the chat. Otherwise, I will keep asking my own questions because I have a lot. Um, what advice would you like? Is there anything that you would do differently, knowing what you know now in like 2019,
Mm,
or even when you first started writing?
um, I think I would tell myself not to take rejection so seriously. I feel like every time that I got rejected in writing, it like took a little chunk out of me. And now I know, like as a person who has more experience now, who actually like helps people who are trying to come into this industry, who is seeing things from like the outside. It's not that serious. It's not something that I have. It doesn't just define my worth. Those rejections, they don't define you. They never defined me. They never defined. I I knew I was a good writer, but I feel like every time that I got rejected or someone said no, it kind of hurt my pride a little bit. It kind of made me question myself. And now I realize, like, if I didn't get into argument or match, would I have even kept going? And if I didn't keep going, would I be where I am now? And with a book that has reached so many people, that has touched a lot of teens, which was my goal all along. So that would be my advice to my 2016 self.
Oh, um, and that is such great advice. Um, now, sorry, I had a question in my head and then it went away. Um, but do like what kind of book are you like so both required reading and the next your next book, they're both contemporary fiction. um are you ever tempted to venture out into other genres like fantasy like JL or
Mm.
anything like that?
I am I am constantly in my agent's inbox about. So fun fact, last year during, you know, still pandemic or height of pandemic times, I was like, I want to write fantasy and horror. So I wrote a middle grade fantasy book that I don't know if it's good, but I wrote it and I want to edit it and I want to make it good and I want to sell it and I now want to be a fantasy writer because writing about real world things can be very taxing on you after a while and 3 books in and I want to write something that's make believe but still has like the social justice themes that I'm interested in as well.
Yeah. So we have another question from the audience, Dana Castro. So we know what inspired you to write this book, but is there a who inspired you to write this book?
Um, not well, okay, so it is a who. So when I started writing this book, that was around the time The Hate You Give came out. And so Angie Thomas, I'm from Memphis, Tennessee. She's from Jackson, Mississippi, which is like an hour away from Memphis, if that, maybe 30 minutes. And I saw her give an interview or something talking about Jackson. And then I went to Google her because at the time I wasn't into, YA really. I was still thinking this was an adult book, so I was reading adult books to do research. So I went to find her book. I went to find The Hate You Give, and I saw that she had a movie coming out, and I saw like how successful she was becoming, and I was like, wow, she is 30 minutes from me, and she accomplished all this. What can I accomplish? So she kind of inspired me to keep writing.
Aw, I love that. And two questions from me. Um, do you have a moment where you were like, "Oh my God, yes, I've made it as a writer. I'm actually a writer." Have you had that moment yet?
Yeah. Every time I do events like this, I really have to like rewire my brain to like tell people that, oh wow, I am a writer. People actually want to listen to me and they care what I have to say and they're reading my books. Because before then, everything is just so like out of sight, out of mind, especially like the sales. Um, I don't like I go to the bookstore, but I kind of like bypass the YA area because I'm like, wow, what if they don't have my books on the shelves? And then I have to be the annoying person that's like, order my book. So coming to these events always reminds me that I'm a writer, that people want to hear me, and yeah, that kind of opened my eyes a bit. Also, when my family read my book and they realized that I wasn't just a starving artist anymore. I actually have product now.
Now, second question, have you had an author fangirl moment? Have you done any of like the books festival circuit stuff yet? Like the any of like conferences, run into any authors that you were like, "Oh my gosh, I'm meeting this person."
So not right now, not as a person with like an actual book out. I have the Bronx Book Festival next month, and I know I'm gonna fangirl out. But last year in November, it was Y'all Fest in Charleston, and I got all the authors of Blackout to sign an arc of required reading. And my hands were shaking, asking them to sign my book. And in my brain, I was like, these are your colleagues now. You don't have to be scared of them. But I was definitely shaking.
I mean, those are some big names, and that was a great book. Um, so I would also be super nervous. I
Right?
get it. Another question from me before we wrap it up. We have time for a couple more audience questions. So please pop them into the chat. Otherwise, I'll just keep talking. Um, did you get to choose the title for your book?
Technically, technically, I chose. Originally, it was titled something completely different that I'm ashamed to say now because thinking back, it's like, wow, this doesn't fit the book at all. But when I sold it, um, my editor and her assistant and my agent and myself, we all came together and we wrote a list of names that we thought were good for the book, and we all kind of decided which one fit, and we landed on required reading. So technically I chose, but not really. It was a group effort, but I love the name. I feel like it's really catchy. I feel like it makes you stop and think and look at the back.
Yes, and it's a great title. Okay, so final question from me. Um, do you have any advice for young folks, especially like when things get overwhelming, when the world is just like, oh, everything is on fire. What can I even do? Um, do you have any advice for them to help take care of themselves?
Yeah. Sometimes you can just do nothing. I've learned that. Sometimes you can just sit on the couch and watch your favorite show, eat your favorite snack, read your favorite book, read my book. Sometimes that's all you can do. I Thinking about the world can be overwhelming sometimes, especially in the times that we live in now. Even I still struggle at my big age of 28 to turn my brain off and to not overthink what's happening, because at the end of the day, um, we are small people on this big earth and we're not here for that long. So do things that make you happy and cherish those moments that you have. Don't overthink.
Yay. Okay, so we have one last question from the audience, and it's Stephanie Johnston, who asks, "What do you recommend for other reading beyond your amazing book?"
Okay. You Truly Assumed by Layla Sabrine. It follows three Muslim teens as on the heels of a terrorist attack in their hometown. Um, Finding Jupiter by Khalees Rowe. It comes out next month. Actually, I will be in conversation with her. She's a Memphis native as well. It's a romance novel that follows two skaters, roller skaters, and they fall in love. So that's a great book. The Undead Truth of Us by Brittany Lewis. It's a sci-fi novel that comes out soon as well. You should definitely pick that up. My favorite, I'm gonna always shout out my favorite OG. If you can, go check out. These are older books, but they always like. I feel like they're very relatable as of now. Sharon Draper, the Hazelwood High trilogy. You should definitely check that out.
All right. Well, thank you so much again for being here. And we really appreciate you. We appreciate Penguin for connecting us with you and for publishing your book. And before we close off, I just wanted to say that your feedback to our audience and to Chris as well, um, your feedback is important for us to be able to continue these programs. So we have a survey. We're dropping it somewhere. Please take a minute to submit the survey link in the chat and select good Books for Good Trouble 6 as a program you attended this evening. If you registered for this event and haven't received a hard copy of required reading for the Disenfranchised Freshman yet, don't worry, copies will be continuing to be sent out to the library you indicated. We also have copies in our library system that you can borrow. But the survey, it's super important for us to get those results because um, it helps us provide more programs like this for viewers like you. Um, and a huge thank you, as always, to Chris for being our guest tonight and to all of you for tuning in for this important conversation. Reminder that you have the power to change what happens in your community. So thank you and good night.
Good night. Thank you.